Hello there. My name is Mackenzie. Welcome back to my channel, and thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to be doing a vampire adjacent reading vlog. What does vampire adjacent reading vlog fucking mean, Mackenzie? Where did you get this idea? I will tell you. So basically, I love vampires, and all of these vampire type books have been coming out, and sometimes they are strictly vampire books, sometimes they are Dracula specific retellings, and sometimes they are books like these three, where they have heavy vampiric vibes, things about them. They have some, we're gonna go through it, okay? Let's start with, first of all, House of Hunger, because all of a sudden she made it onto this vlog instead of my actual vampire reading vlog, because I was going to do that one first, where it was just like some vampire stories, but they're not vampires. Yeah. So, in this story, House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, who wrote Year of the Witching, which I fucking adored, and this one, so far so good. I'm about halfway through for this one. I started reading, and it was like, okay, they're not vampires, but how much blood does a person have to drink before I get to decide they're a vampire before they do? You know, like, it was just like they're drinking their blood, they're kind of like having sex with them, they're like basically enthralled, like it was so much vampire, but not really. Not vampire, they're just not saying the V word. So that's gonna be the first book that we're gonna be reading for this vlog. The other two books I actually got as recommendations from Books and Lala. The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay, I believe is her like first or second favorite book of the year. This one is about a guy who wrote a memoir, and then another girl who he knew during that time, who he is claiming is a vampire, is going back through his memoir and like rewriting parts of it and like talking about how he doesn't really remember very well, or why would he like share her intimate secrets, stuff like that. And Books and Lala described it as you going to the theater to see a friendship story and hearing the vampire movie playing from the theater down below. So, vibes, vampire-ish vibes. And then this one, Woman Eating, now, she is a vampire in this one. And this is why I was like, if she's a vampire in this, like a legit vampire in this one, and they're not vampires in this one, how am I going to say that this one is more vampire adjacent than this one is? You know? So in this one, she is a vampire, but the main more focus is a coming of age story, really, because she has lost her mother in her life, and now she has to kind of go through and figure out how to be a vampire and be a person on her own. So we have this one as well. I am already started this one, so I know this one is coming first, but I don't know the order that I'm going to read the other two. It'll just be based on my mood, but I freaking love these colors together. I feel like this was just... House of Hunger doesn't really fit, but like these two, solid. Okay, so I am going to send you on off. Let's talk about House of Hunger. In the end, there are only those who eat and those who bleed. Marion is living a very hard life and finds that she is really not living for much. An unfulfilling job, an abusive brother, and a friendship that only amounts to stolen moments. She is not a girl of weak will, and she does not want to die in the slums. So a blood maid she becomes. I finished House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. This took me a lot longer to finish than I anticipated, only because I didn't lose. I did. I lost access to the audiobook through my library, so through extraordinary means I got another audiobook, and I think that tells you how much I really, really wanted it. I got a 30-day trial for Audible and canceled it immediately just so I could have the audiobook for this. This was great. I really enjoyed it. I felt like while these characters weren't vampires, like none of them were, there was like blood drinking, and then a lot of this like possessive, abusive type of relationship, manipulative, a relationship that is kind of poly in this sense, in a very unhealthy sense. And the way that all of the blood maids felt like Dracula's brides at the end, there was this wonderful, great, not wonderful, great, because it was really sad and depressing, the ending, but like there was this moment where I was like, oh, it's like the wives in A Dowry of Blood actually taking steps and making moves to get rid of Dracula, which was kind of how this ending felt like. There is this moment as well where the blood maids are looking for help from someone, and that person really only helps them because they have a daughter. This book is really depressing because while there is a lot of like, I guess, hope towards the end, there is a lot more moments where everybody's just in on the abuse that is happening, and it's rough, it's hard, and there is a disease that Elizabeth has, which, while it isn't vampirism, it kind of might as well be, which is why she has so many blood maids, but I did kind of enjoy at least those aspects. The story was troubling and haunting and sad and depressing, but I did enjoy what was being told. This was a very well written story. I really enjoy Alexis Henderson as an author, I think, officially. I just can't wait for anything that she does next. So I felt like this was a really good way to kick off this vlog because while it was so not vampires, absolutely not vampires, it did all of the things that I want in a vampire story to do. I want it to give me the awful and the abusive relationship and the sexual nature, and it was a lot. And I enjoyed reading it. Recommend for vampire fans, even though it's not vampires. So next I have two books, Pallbearer's Club by Paul Tremblay and Woman Eating by Claire Kohda. I guess I'm going to try and see which one I can get on audio from my library. While I very much want to read, I want to read both of them. I'm not sure which one I'm going to enjoy more, and for that reason, I don't know which one to start with. Do I pick the one that I think that I'm probably going to enjoy more and do that one first and then potentially be disappointed by this one? Who knows? I'll get back to you.
Lydia takes starving artists to a whole new level. Being a vampire since she was an infant should mean that she is ready to take care of herself when her mother gets too sick to. But that's not the case. Living on her own for the first time presents many challenges, and we follow Lydia through all of them.
I finished it. Oh my goodness. Okay. Amazing. Spectacular. 5 stars. This was perfect. This felt so, can I say, genuine when I know we're talking about vampires? I feel like I can, because this was very living the life, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of like Interview with a Vampire, where it was just kind of the events of their life and how they had to get from being turned to where we meet them to where they end up changing and, eventually becoming the type of vampire that does end up eating humans. However, this book very much relies on this time frame between her being turned as a vampire and officially giving in to eating humans, because she doesn't eat humans. This focuses a lot on her relationship with her mother and how that has skewed her perception of herself, her vampirism, her humanity, and how she should be treating herself. A lot of Lydia's self-worth and self-love, or lack thereof, comes from her relationship with her mother. Not that her mother hated her mother loved her, but told her to hate herself, which, relatable. I genuinely love how this vampire novel focuses on the themes that are always discussed in the vampire lore. It's depression, it's self-hatred, it's self-loathing, and a lack of desire for life, or wanting to love life but not entirely sure how. It is sad and miserable and depressing, and it is right in line with other vampire stories. It fits right in. And what I think is great about this is that while I'm sure people are upset that there is not a lot of like action scenes or like death, I think that people who truly do love vampire stories for the themes that are being brought up will enjoy this, because that is entirely what we were talking about the whole time. Lydia as a character is very relatable in her self-hatred and her self-loathing and her desires and what she wants. It's very sad and melancholic and just beautiful. So after I read this and I was like, oh, 5 stars, right to Goodreads. Let's read and see what everybody else thought. Everybody else hated it. This is like a 3.5 on Goodreads right now, and I think that's because a lot of people picked it up not sure of what they were getting, and so they went in with false expectations, which is entirely fair. But also I saw a lot of comments about how this is just sad girl lit, but make it vampire, and okay, she is sad. It's depressing, but that's vampirism, I think, and living forever. It's a depressing thought to have, let alone reality. But what about all of the sad male fantasy that comes out? I feel like so many fantasies that get recommended are just about sad men doing a thing. Okay, this is a sad girl doing a thing, but I'm not belittling him for being either a sad man or a man who is sad. So I just kind of felt like that was unfair to say. I think exploring the depths of depression and self-hatred through a fantastical lens is how we as humans can then take it into our life and use it in our reality. This just happened to be a sad female as opposed to a sad male. I don't see a difference, and I don't know why this is being labeled as such when the other is not. But I loved it nonetheless. I'm not going to go on a rant right now. I just want more people who love vampiric themes to read this book. This, while I feel is very true to vampiric themes in books and movies, I do feel like more accurately is fitting into our vampire adjacent vlog because a lot of people are upset with the lack of paranormal action, vampire eating people kind of thing. I would put it in more of a true to vampire form vlog, but regardless, it's here. So now we only have one book left to read, which is The Pallbearer's Club by Paul Tremblay. I'm really excited for this. I do have the audiobook as well. So it's really fun. At the end of like each chapter, there's like a bunch of like writing in red for the other character who's annotating this memoir. So this plays on like book within a book kind of thing. So as I understand it, there's this character who is writing a memoir, and we are reading the memoir that he wrote. We are also reading the annotations of a character that he wrote his memoir partially about, who was his friend in the past, and she is annotating and kind of critiquing his work, critiquing his writing, and critiquing his memory of the past. I'm pretty interested because I feel like when I know that characters are supposed to be awful, they're supposed to be bad because they are the bad guy, it makes it much more entertaining to watch them be bad, because I know there is a reasoning behind it. There will be justice at the end. It will be glorious. And I feel like this is going to give some of that, if not at least a critique. This is cute. So it's all white, pages inside are purple, and then we have it in red, crossed out. Art Barbara. Barbara. That sounds like a fake name. Okay, so I will check in with you after I have finished this, and then we will be at the end of our vampire adjacent vlog.
Art Barbara's manuscript for his memoir about how a childhood friend may or may not be a vampire is found by that same friend. But more than being about vampires, this is a coming-of-age story from the perspective of one friend, while being interjected and corrected by another.
So, I finished this.
This was great. This was excellent. I gave this 5 stars. Now let's talk about it. Vampiric-wise, did this have vampires in it? I don't know. I don't know. Because I went into this book with this preconceived notion that Mercy, the person who's annotating this manuscript of a memoir by Art Barbara, I knew that Art Barbara was trying to convince the reader that Mercy was a vampire and that she was draining the life out of him. I believed that Mercy's annotations were under the goal of correcting Art Barbara in that fact, that she is in fact not a vampire. And you had to kind of decide at the end like who was telling the truth, and that is, I don't think, not at all what happened. Looking back, or thinking back on the annotations, I'm nearly positive that there is not a moment where Mercy says that she is not a vampire. There are definitely moments where she is joking around, where she is trying to make you feel like she may or may not be telling the truth or being as open and honest as she could be, and I feel like a lot of that also has something to do with the fact that Mercy is afraid of not being accepted. There are a lot of great quotes in this book about the real vampiric themes that we always read about obsession and about feeling alone and eternally alone, cosmically alone, and only just desiring somebody to understand you, to want to be around you, and to enjoy the time that you have around that person. It also talks a lot about this kind of toxic relationship that they have, where Art doesn't really, he seems like he likes her, but also that he doesn't. He blames her for a lot of things, but always wants her around. He blames her in moments about his health degenerating and his scoliosis getting worse, and he still seeks her out. And she is not honest with him and kind of makes him question things and not really believe her all the time. And all of this leads to this pivotal point and this pivotal moment where Art is like, I am a vampire. I think she turned me into a vampire and I don't know what to do with myself and I don't want to hurt anybody. This was absolutely amazing, and I feel like I will be reading this at some point in 2023, because if we can talk very frankly about spoilers and the very end annotations of this very briefly, it is at the end annotations where Mercy nearly admits to being Mary, the original creature in the story that they are talking about throughout this novel. Mary, who was a vampire without being turned into one within the story and not knowing her own background. And when Art dies at the end, the person that he's been writing about, Mary, Mercy, whatever you want to call her, says that she digs him up, sees his body start to becoming vampiric and like healing itself, takes his heart, burns it, and drinks it so that way he will be cured of vampirism. And throughout this manuscript, she consistently corrects him and says that this is a novel, it's not a memoir, it's a novel. And the only thing that I can gather is that she is trying to give the novel there's like a couple ways that you could explain that away. Either she's trying to give what she perceives as a novel a better ending, one that feels much more on the nose or on point with her being a vampire and him getting his final wish. And she could want to give it that ending maybe because his ending really isn't an ending. It's just him attempting to attack Eddie and then leaving, when truly he ends up dying after that. And that's the reality. So is she trying to make his novel more novel-like? Is she trying to make his memoir more memoir-like? Is she telling the truth? Is she lying? Does she want the reader to believe that she's a vampire because that will make for a better story, or because it's true? There's a lot to dissect there, and I want to reread. I didn't annotate on my first read through because I wasn't sure what I was looking for, and I was pretty positive I knew everything that was going to be happening, so I didn't want to annotate because I wasn't sure what to annotate for. But now I need to go back because we're trying to find evidence. So finally,
finally, that wraps up our vampire adjacent vlog. So with these vampire adjacent books, I feel like it's very safe to say what makes a book vampiric adjacent is not really whether or not they have vampires or how gory it is, or how like blockbuster movie it is, because I've also really found that a lot of people, a lot of readers, when they go into a vampire novel, they're expecting a lot of vampire. They're expecting a lot of attacks, bloodletting, being drinking from, things like that. They're expecting gore and horror. And what makes these books horrific is not the fact that someone is out there lurking in the night trying to take your blood. It's all of these toxic relationships and this feeling of cosmic loneliness and not feeling like you have a place in the world and that no one really cares, and all you are really looking for is for someone to understand you and for you to understand yourself. And I feel like you could say that about any and all of these books and it would all be true. I've really enjoyed this experiment because it has really shown me that while I was pretty positive I liked the themes of vampire books better than the actual like gore or horror of a vampire book, obviously I am in the minority of that. So it was really interesting to try and find out like what, because I've heard critiques on all of these books. Not everybody likes it. I feel like the ones that everybody likes the most is House of Hunger, but mainly because that does have a lot of bloodletting and drinking and a lot of sex. And these other two are much more like, we're about the themes, bro. So I can understand where everybody's coming from, but I'm really glad that I got to read these books. I'm glad that I got to do this vlog with you guys. Let me know down in the comments what kind of vampire reader you are, if you prefer the gore and the bloodletting and the fangs and the attacks, or if you prefer the themes, or if you're like me and you like both, so long as it has something vampiric. Let me know down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!
I don't wanna let myself down myself.